The Panthers are taking in the Finnish culture as they've been there for the last 48 hours prior to the Global Series in Tampere.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, October 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You can do that all at FanDuel.com. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here on another edition of the show as the Florida Panthers are overseas in Finland, which means as we get ready for this global series on Friday and Saturday when the Panthers take on the ice to face off against the Dallas Stars, the Panthers have enjoyed a lot of off-ice activities prior to that, with them making a stop in Helsinki, as they have been there now for the last 48 hours prior to transporting to Tampere for the two games. But it is a Wednesday, which means it is a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. And here to discuss everything in relation to the global series and we're going to do our best to try to paint a picture of the Finnish culture as we are still here in the States, and also discuss what the other guys have spoken about. The five guys who are showcased, the four players, Barkov, Etu, Lundell, and Mikkola, along with Tuomo Ruutu, and everything with the food and setting up the Four Nations. Here to join me to discuss all of that, a Winans Wednesday evening edition with myself and Jacob Winans. Jacob, as I texted you earlier this morning, very excited for this one. Oh, let me unmute you. There we go.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it's awesome. It feels just like the off season right now. It feels almost celebratory, but you got to kind of remind yourself that there's two games and 4 points on the line in the next couple of days. But at one point we discussed this when this was announced as a potential Stanley Cup rematch if Dallas had made it and ended up playing the Panthers, and it got so close to that being the reality. But no, this is awesome. It's going to showcase the Finnish talent. It's going to showcase the Finnish culture and the fan support that the NHL has there in a country that's really become kind of a factory for great NHL players, with the best of them being Sasha Barkov. And yeah, it's super exciting for them, super exciting for the team. Great for the expansion of the global game, and for the Panthers to now just be a team that's not just local to the South Florida market, but being internationally showcased, and as a Stanley Cup champion to add on to it, it's pretty special.
Yeah, and then talking about all the days with the cup over the summer, and now the guys are back after celebrating the Barkov City with in Tampere. And then speaking of just the showcase, Paul Maurice discussing how his perspective on how the game is not just the United States and Canada's, and how it's the world's game, and how it's expanding so much with that. And then Finland, a country of 5 million people, makes up 5% of the NHL. And then we talk about the Florida Panthers identity. I mean, especially with prior to the Tkachuk trade being the greatest trade in the history of the franchise, the second greatest trade with Roberto Luongo and Olli Jokinen, and then Jokinen being the captain of the team. And then basically one of the Finnish identity that the Panthers had during the early 2000s portion of them, even though they weren't necessarily successful. And then, I mean, Tuomo Ruutu being in the mix. I mean, not only is Tuomo Ruutu a mentee of Paul Maurice, but he was the only coach, the assistant coach from the staff that was carried over from the previous staff with Andrew Burnett. So that's something special for Tuomo Ruutu in getting this opportunity. A 14-year career, was Barkov's teammate in the Olympics in his first go round right before the NHL had that little hiatus, and also Paul Maurice endorsing Ruutu as well and talking about how much of an offensive game mindset that Ruutu has and how it makes him such a better coach. So I'm happy for just as much as the players as I am for Tuomo Ruutu.
Yeah, it's super cool. And you mentioned it. The Panthers have long had a Finnish presence in this franchise, and it's kind of become part of their identity. It definitely goes beyond Barkov, and now with Etu, Mikkola, and Lundell, especially Lundell, this season blossoming into the next Finnish star. He's been, make no mistake about it, he's been playing at an all-star level to start this season, and the potential is there for him to be the next great Finn. There's definitely been an identity with the Panthers of Finnish hockey. Olli Jokinen, he captained some teams that were not very good, but he was fantastic during that era. And if he was on any other team or if he had more talent around him, he would have been a player who would have made a lot more headlines as a Florida Panther when he was the captain. But Ruutu is such a cool story because he's one of those guys who in his playing career didn't necessarily get all of the hype and the love, and he wasn't really a in your face, like well marketed player, but he was such a great role player, so good at what he did, and his longevity was a big part of what you can talk about in his career. He lasted a long time and made an impact for a long time. And that's kind of the way it is with the Finnish identity with the Panthers, is under the radar, underappreciated, but so important to success. And they don't ask for attention. They're not in the spotlight, but everything they do contributes to winning. And Ruutu is that to a T as a coach. He's a guy who doesn't get talked about. He's on the staff, more of a behind the scenes type of coach, and doesn't get a lot of the headlines, but his name's on the Stanley Cup for a reason. And that's a winning player. That's a winning coach. And he's definitely going to be a head coach in the NHL someday.
Yeah. And then given a lot of credit for Lundell's development, but also him talking about Lundell just coming to the ice to be better every single day, and how for Ruutu, for him, for Lundell, getting the responsibility of getting the Helsinki portion of the trip, and not wanting to reveal his secrets as well there. Lundell calling it weird how he's back home playing an NHL game after he was in the stands for the previous Global Series back in 2019 for the Panthers there, and now it's full circle. He says it's weird. I mean, it's funny because we think it's weird. I still sometimes think it's weird that the Panthers are even Stanley Cup champions after 30 years. I mean, weird but awesome. And it took me till opening night for it to finally hit. And it feels like for Lundell, it's like it's finally hit him. I mean, he's been away for a few years now. He did spend his draft plus one in HIFK right before coming over. But man, what a year that must have been for Lundell to get another year of pro hockey right before transferring over to the US. I mean, it's a different style of game. But for him, just that experience there really helped shape him into a guy who was ready to play right away. He's never played an AHL game neither. So that's another thing of how ready he was for this moment for the Panthers.
Yeah. And it also came at a time when the Panthers were developing some Finnish talent. They had just in maybe a couple seasons prior, Aleksi Heponiemi had torn up that league and had made his transition over to North American hockey, where it didn't necessarily go great for him here. Just, some of the things you couldn't control, like just height, size, those sort of things are career limiting for some guys. But he had a great and very promising start in Finland. And at the time that Lundell was doing his draft plus one, he led his team in goals, and I believe he led them in points. I'd have to double check it, but he was also on the same team as Henrik Borgstrom, who was a Panthers first round pick and was still in the Panthers prospect system at the time. So that was that was a cool experience. It was almost like that was a little bit of a development system for the Panthers at the time. And Finland has been great to the Florida Panthers. There's some really key players on the team now, and some key players and prospects historically that the Panthers have pulled out of Finland. And it's a place they scout really well. It's a place that you kind of know what you're getting when you draft a Finnish player. They're going to be defensively responsible. They're going to have sneaky good skill. They're going to be the smartest players on the ice, and it's such a cool culture of and a brand of hockey that's been developed there in that country. And it's funny, Lundell mentioned the 2019 Global Series. If you look back at that, it's so different. The state that the Panthers are in now as a franchise. They played against the Winnipeg Jets in that one, and I believe if I'm not mistaken, they split those games 1-1 with the Jets. But it was almost like Barkov. Yes, Barkov was a Finnish star, and they wanted to market him, but it felt like those two games were centered around marketing Patrik Laine. Laine was the hot ticket. He was the guy you were paying the box office admission for. And Barkov was like, oh, he's really cool, great Finnish player, but we're here to see Laine. And I remember I almost thought Barkov wasn't going to get to play the second game because he got lit up by Dustin Byfuglien in the first game. And bounced right off the hit, but he got blasted in that game. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. We're going to lose Barkov, and it's just going to be the Laine show. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And if I'm not mistaken, not only was Anton Lundell in the stands, but Paul Maurice is on the opposite bench. So that it's a pretty cool full circle moment. Now they return with Lundell as a Panther and Paul Maurice as a Stanley Cup winning coach. So yeah, definitely come a long way since the last Global Series.
Yeah, and Paul Maurice discussed how there was fans chirping at him, not asking him whether Patrik Laine was going to show Barkov, whether he was going to be his daddy or something like that. Some Pedro Martinez vibes for sure there. It's funny, I'm looking up that HIFK roster. He did not lead the team in points, but he led the team in goals, and he played like 20 less games due to injury that year for him. So still impressive in the small sample size of what Anton Lundell did that year in HIFK. But we're going to continue the conversation on the other side of this of the break, where we're going to discuss more about the food culture in Finland, on what and all the other off ice activities that the Panthers got themselves into over in Finland. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money in sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that lead up to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. And if you think that Cale Makar is going to get more than a point per game, you could do that all on Prize Picks. Austin Matthews as well. If you think that he is on his way to a Rocket Richard, Nico Hischier is the first player to get to double-digit goals this year, so you could put your stock on him there, all on Prize Picks. So download the app, use code LOCKEDONHL, and get up to $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, Locked On NHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. And you can do that all on Prize Picks. Run your game. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, a Wednesday evening edition here. And the guys were talking about a lot of the off-ice activities that they were going to do. It all started off with that red-eye flight right after they got out of their game in Buffalo. Arrived maybe at 7 a.m. Local time here in the States, at least on the East Coast. And all started off with Barkov showing Matthew Tkachuk some of the little delicacies there in Helsinki. And then the very next day, they were on the local newspaper there. So pretty cool to see how much they were showcased there. So even setting up the whole trip, Anton Lundell was asked in Buffalo, getting ready for the Bowl series, what's something that he was looking forward to, and Erod, with the stall next to Lundell, interrupted salmon soup, talking about it. And I mean, you can only imagine, even before the cameras were on, of how much he was just discussing of how much he was looking forward to showing the teammates of the place. And a lot of the questions were asked of what the other guys or want them to take in on the trip, and just of how great this place is, how the scenery is, and something as simple as having salmon soup as well. Jameson Olive and Doug Plagans talk about the chocolates, about bringing back the chocolate as well from there. So that's another thing that is very very rich in the culture. But Jacob, I want to talk to you about this one thing that Sean Rourke of NHL at the Rink spoke about, and he talked about reindeer meat. Have you ever heard about reindeer meat before today? Have you?
Never in my life, and I can't say that's something that I'd be super excited to try personally. That's interesting.
So okay, so it is something from Finland. So it's reindeer meat is thinly sliced and sautéed in water, cream or beer, served with mashed potato, picked cucumber, and cranberry sauce. So I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a screen share here on the show, here, which is another reason for you guys to subscribe to the YouTube channel here. So here is reindeer meat here for on some of the dishes. So once again, it is sautéed onions, cranberries, and meat. So when you look at these pictures, I mean, we think reindeer, we think of Christmas. So now when you look at this, honestly, it looks quite appetizing, if you ask me. Now looking at a picture, now that you're hearing this for the first time, Jacob, what do you think? What just by the looks of it?
See, it looks delicious. So if that were put on a plate in front of me, I would absolutely tear that up and it would probably taste great. I would just prefer if you don't tell me beforehand that I'm about to eat Rudolph. But other than that, it looks fantastic. That looks like a 10 out of 10.
No doubt. So that is one thing that for reindeer meat, that they are very rich when it comes to that. And also it is considered one of the healthiest foods out there for as far as Finnish dining for them. And also, we also spoke about over the summer. I remember a discussion when they were taking the cup to Finland, how it's also one of the best places to live, and it's voted as for one of the as the tops in the world. And it really comes down to scenery, and also year-round weather. I mean, there are parts of the year, from what we've heard, what I've understood, is that it's not that sometimes the sun is like there for like 8 hours. At least currently it's there for 8 hours, and then a lot of the time is dark. I mean, latitude and longitude wise, it's a very north. And so right about now it's 50 degrees, under 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so under 10 degrees Celsius for our international listeners. So also when it comes to the food, and just how, and also us being in America, of how a lot of processed stuff we consume, we see that overseas it's more of less of that with processed foods, and actually like more of the handmade stuff instead of all these preservatives. So what else do you process whenever you hear that?
Yeah, see, I haven't traveled internationally a ton myself, but that's definitely a place I'd like to get to because I mean that food looks delicious. But yeah, everything that, I mean, we've heard for years how Barkov loves talking about the lakes in Finland, the weather, the scenery. It sounds like an absolutely incredible place. But the team being there to play hockey, I hope they're keeping. I hope they're keeping the focus on the ice, but you know, it's definitely hard for some of these guys who are getting to see this for the first time and experience the culture, and the food looks delicious. It all sounds delicious, and honestly, I'd I'd be I don't care what it is. I'd be more than willing to try anything if anything food wise over there that's clearly working, because it's turned Barkov into an absolute monster of a hockey player and just a beast of a human being. So whatever they serve over there, it has to be good, it has to be quality. So maybe I
Yep.
should just get on the Finland Barkov diet.
Oh, no doubt. And they also, the Florida Panthers also posted on their social media a little bit of that picture from the skateboard over the Stanley Cup with Phil Pritchard, and I forget the skateboarder's name. I'm not too familiar with that person, so I'm sorry if I'm mixing up, if I don't have the person's name. But also, one thing that was also discussed, and I was mostly ignorant to this, of how much they appreciate saunas over there. I mean, we saw them in with the cup in the saunas, but at the same time, it really you don't really hear it so much here as much over there, of how much they like it. And we discussed this in our pre-production meeting. The video that Katie Engelson of Script Sports put out of Steve Goldstein going into the sauna and then diving into the ocean. And we spoke about how cold it is over there right now, under 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm just like, if I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, no way in hell that I'm doing that after going into a sauna. Maybe before, but when you're putting your body temperature there and then jumping in, I don't know if I would be willing to do that. But hey, that sounds like a lot of fun regardless. Maybe something you would do once but never again. But I had a pretty good laugh. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was funny. Goldie's definitely quite the personality. But even that's even a little bit too far for me. I don't know. I don't even do well in a cold swimming pool, and by cold I mean anything under 90 degrees. I don't. The cold water would have done it for me, but the saunas seem awesome. I think the sauna culture there is super cool. And yeah, really good for your health, really good for recovery, rest and recovery. It's
Hmm.
great. Um, so yeah, I would love to try the sauna, but the cold plunge into the Baltic Sea afterwards, I think I'll pass on that part.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so definitely, I'm hoping that the guys are just having such a blast. And there was actually a group photo of them on the water earlier today, that I saw on Instagram from the team. So they are definitely having a blast, as they'll be back on the ice for practice tomorrow, to prepare for the actual game. So these are the days to have fun, and then it's on to the on ice portion of what the trip is ultimately about, and it's getting 4 points out of four. But we're going to transition over to segment number three, where we are going to discuss more of a little bit of the vocabulary that Bill Zito has learned. Has Paul Maurice learned any Finnish during his time as coaching in the NHL and going to Finland? We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And get ready to tackle the NFL action right now with America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you can place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Segment number three here on this Wednesday, October 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, as we discuss more about the global series and also discussing more of what the guys have learned or maybe not have learned throughout their time in working with Finnish players. And Bill Zito, he spoke about how he spent the 80s in Finland playing hockey, and even the late 90s, 1995 to 2000. So he's got an appreciation for the Finnish culture and the players. But also he spoke a lot about his friendship with Jarmo Kekalainen. I mean, we spoke about it even a lot prior to even after his hire with him, on just how much he shaped him. I know Jarmo's not the GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets anymore, but that's really how much he's built him up. And also his brothers worked in the organization as well. So there's also that family connection. We've spoken about the players, but there's also that front office connection for the Cats. So, and also really Zito getting that perspective on this global series, really being that whole setup of the global series. He spoke about Barkov. It's not if/when he's going to be the captain of Team Finland, and just really for that for him. I know it's not too much of a rich history of like more than two handfuls of players who became Impact Hall of Famers for the Panthers, but still, when you get to relate to them and also get to be a teacher, like we spoke about Tuomo Ruutu earlier, that really truly helps up and down the organization on how you're able to just learn from other people. And then he used the Finnish word sisu, which Etu described as guys who work hard, who are willing to come to the rink every day and just put their head down and just get to work. Hard work ethic and people who don't give up. So that's some vocabulary that we get to learn. Even you and someone like you and I and our listeners get to learn a little bit of just about the word sisu, on just where their approach to overall the game of hockey. Oh, hold on. I have you on mute again. Damn it. There we
go. Personally, I feel like that word sisu should be on the locker room or somewhere in the Panthers dressing room. The sort of embodiment of that word is Barkov, it's Lundell, it's Mikkola, it's Etu, it's these guys who put everything on the line to win the Stanley Cup last year. So not at all surprised about that, but yeah, I mean we talked about it with the Panthers having a long history of Finnish talent. Barkov is, of course, the gold standard of Finnish hockey and definitely the gold standard of Panthers developing out of Finland. But yeah, this is definitely a precursor to the Four Nations. Barkov's definitely going to captain that team, and that should be really cool, because I think there's it's a deserved recognition for him, but also it's a big responsibility for him as well, and it's one that I think he'll rise to the challenge, because it is a country that doesn't have a super high population, but it is a country that's diehard hockey. And all eyes are going to be on Barkov. He's the Stanley Cup champion. He's the best Finnish player in the world. There's a lot of people looking up to him. There's a lot of people that see him as a hero, that see him as a role model. And it's not just about what he does on the ice. It's the way he carries himself off the ice. He's such an incredible player and person. He's exactly who you want to see as a role model. He's exactly who you want to see as a leader and as a captain. But it definitely means a lot more when you're not just the captain of a team for a franchise. You're the captain of a team for a country. And Finland is a country that takes hockey very seriously, especially in international tournaments. So for him to get that opportunity would be incredible. And regardless of the letter he wears on his jersey, he's a leader. He's a role model, and he's gonna be the heart and soul of that Finnish team in Four Nations and any other international tournaments that he gets to participate in, whether that's the Olympics or if he decides to play in a world championship again. It's an incredible honor for him, but it's one that comes with a lot of responsibility that I think he's ready to take on.
Yeah, I didn't mention this earlier when we mentioned Olli Jokinen and Tuomo Ruutu, but he was teammates with both of them on the Olympic team in 2014, and he's also 37 points away from passing Olli Jokinen in total points for a Finnish player. And when it's all said and done for his career, he's going to finish third in total points behind Jari Kurri and Teemu Selanne. So just to let you guys know where Barkov is how much he's climbing up the ranks for where he's going to finish. And no pun intended there. But I really hope, this is more of a hope. We saw Patrick Laine with the hat trick, Mikko Rantanen 2 years ago when Columbus faced off against the Colorado Avalanche in their global series. I really, really, really hope that we see a Barkov hat trick. They're not common for him, but hopefully we definitely see that there for him.
And it's definitely not because he can't do it. He's just so unselfish. But I hope Coach Maurice or anybody is in Barkov's ear telling him these 2 games, be selfish. If he wants to take 15 shots a game in these 2 games against Dallas, please do. These are the ones for him to be selfish and be shoot first. He can stat pad a little for these ones.
Yeah, he has 4 hat tricks in his career. 2 of them against Montreal. One of them was the Carey Price, that incredible move on Carey Price. I remember
between the legs.
Yep, between the legs. So hopefully we see that for him. But also, Paul Maurice was asked about how much Finnish he's learned over the years, and one the answer that made me laugh is like, oh, Nico Mikkola, after a shift, he's coming over and saying something. I may not understand it, but the other guys are laughing. So it must be some type of swear for him. So those are the only thing. And it's funny because why is it that we human beings only I guess it's this little thing called selective hearing. So we only learn some of the bad things. I mean, I'm not going to repeat some of the Spanish words that would be used here. But a lot of times when people learn Spanish in South Florida, they pick up on the bad stuff here. But it's just so hilarious how the answer that Paul Maurice gave to the media over there in Finland on whenever Nico Mikkola comes over to the bench and just says something. It's just you just wonder, and it's just a little bit of that mystery, which the mystery makes it actually kind of fun in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And we talk about it's hockey almost has its own language. Anyone who watched the Amazon Prime series Face Off, I think if you listen to anything Matthew Tkachuk and Paul Maurice said in that series, you wouldn't have gotten 2 words without hearing an F-bomb. It almost reminded me of the episode of SpongeBob when he's trying to catch the bus, and they have their own language there, and every 2 words they have to like spit in between. But this in hockey, it's like you got to throw in an F-bomb every 2 words. So I'm sure Mikkola's colorful Finnish language. Somebody understands it. I would love to be in on the joke, but I don't know. I feel like that's just hockey in general. But I will say this: Mikkola is a really underappreciated guy, and you don't hear him talk much. But ever since the Stanley Cup, it seems he's become quite a comedian. He's definitely one of the funnier dudes on the team. So I hope we get to keep him around for a while. But his personality is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And even though he's a very soft-spoken, we always talk about guys who are low-key funny, and that's even what people describe as Aleksander Barkov. It's just very dry humor, and I guess that just comes with the territory for them. So hey, but hey, it's our job to try to understand them more and more, and that's a little bit of what we're trying to do overall this weekend as they continue to take in the global series along with the rest of the team. But once again, this is about showcasing the players here on the Florida Panthers of Finnish culture there for them. But Jacob, I want to say thank you, but I shouldn't say thank you. I should say kiitos. I want to say kiitos for joining me on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. That's Finnish for thank you for joining me here on this edition. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8. And hopefully when the Panthers get back home, I'll see some of you guys at the arena.
Awesome, man. And I will see you next week, my friend.
Looking forward to it. Kiitos.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.